I'll make my own case hard by looking solely at Islam, because it is such a controversial subject in our world today.
I know a world without religion that you can look at. I'm from that world. It's called...
This debate is about if this world would be better off without religion, especially Islam.
I want to say, first of all, it's so interesting that the side that's quoting the Bible is that side, and the side that has actually provided evidence of any kind is this side. So let me give you another piece of evidence as opposed to the generalities. In their Encyclopedia of Wars, okay, the Encyclopedia of Wars, Charles Phillips and Alan Axelrod, they chronicle over 1,700 serious conflicts throughout history. Do you want to know what percentage actually reduced to religious wars? 7%.
David,
the reason I'm saying this is because it's not about credulity. No, it's not about credulity. The idea that people who are religious because of some psychological deficit. But people who are not religious because they reason their way to the lack of religion, not only slights the idea that religious people are capable of thought, but also tries to sort of railroad you into this belief that you should condemn it without actually looking at all the statistics, the ideas, the history that we cited. And that sort of slighting of the religious belief makes me think that your argument might not be as sound as you think it is.
Can I come back to that? I hear a certain kind of incoherence on the other side there. Firstly, if you're religious, you live longer. That puzzles me. I mean, isn't heaven meant to be a nice place? It's always been...
Moses was like 800 years old or something like that.
Yeah, and then Dinesh says that one reason why people stay religious into old age is because they're thinking about life after death. Well, that was Bernie Madoff's mistake. He promised returns in this life. So, religion... But I'm afraid the thing is that most people are brought up in a religious tradition, and those people who escape religion do it because they look at the facts, they look at the evidence, they look at the morality, they look at the teachings, they look at the world around them, and they recognize that there is something very divisive and very distorting here. Look at small children in kindergarten. All races and ethnicities and backgrounds and classes and religions, they don't know that. We have to work very, very hard to divide them and tell them what tribe they belong to and what religion they belong to.
Very few religious people will tell you it's to get into heaven. It's because it's what God expects them to do. That's first of all. In other words, you do it because other human beings are created in the image of God. And if you take that out, then our link is a species link. But if we're all children of the same God, then you are my brother and sister, and that's why you do it. It's different. It's not because you're afraid of God. And second, people's self-reported charitable doings, although obviously everyone here is completely honest, people's self-reported charitable doings are a lot less reliable than survey after survey after survey. And the way that the surveys were answered by Putnam, by Brooks, by Koenig, by respected sociologists, the way that he answered them is by asking you to raise your hand. Now, I want to ask you seriously, how many of you believe that all these sociologists and psychologists are cooking the data? And how many, you don't have to raise your hand, and how many of you believe that whether you like religion or not, the truth is that it does make people much more inclined to be self-sacrificing in this world? And if you don't believe it, then all I can say is, I know a world without religion that you can look at. I'm from that world. It's called Hollywood.
All right, let's go to another question.
I am Muslim. Religion is really the question for me today, because is it the misuse of religion that really bring all this drama and all the chaos that we really talk about, or is it really the religion itself? Because if I have a weapon, right, and I use it against you, and in this day today, we go to court, I will take the person on his character and take him to court and take him to jail, not the company that make the weapons or the owner of the company.
If you look at any religious text, it can be interpreted in any way and give you an excuse to do anything. These gentlemen here, I'm sure they're very nice people, and they look at it in the most benign way. I've heard Rabbi Welpe over there say that the whole process of religion is that you take all these complicated books and you filter them through human consciousness, and out comes something that makes sense. I agree. And when you filter them out, what you get is humanism. Jefferson did the same thing with the Bible. He took out everything that he thought was contemptible or had nothing to do with the origins of religion. He got 48 pages. I say you could bring it down to one page that said, or one phrase, which would be, do unto others as you do as you would have done to you. It is as simple as that.
When Jefferson was asked what is the source of our rights, he could have said the social contract, he could have said the Enlightenment, but no, he said it's the Creator. He could think of only one source. One word about the texts. I think the point that Rabbi Wolpe and I are stressing is that the way to interpret a text is to look and see whether the people who revere the text do the things in the text. So, for example, he read a passage from Deuteronomy about chopping off people's arms or removing their genitals. So I ask you, how many religious people are going around without arms or genitals? No one who is Jewish or Christian reads the text that way. So there's a form of, you might say, atheist fundamentalism in taking the text in so literal a way that no Christian, there was a debate that between Paul and the early apostles about which aspects of the ancient law should apply to Christians. It was settled 2,000 years ago that Christians would not follow the Old Testament in a literal way. And even the guys in Dover aren't doing that.
Isn't religion basically a fear of death and ultimately your ultimate judgment? And the selfish belief that humans are so important that we should have the right to live forever?
Well, you guys are going to say yes to that, I'm pretty sure. So I'm going to go over this way.
I think your question is echoing an argument in Sigmund Freud that religion is wish fulfillment. That life is tough. We have diabetes. We have the gravedigger. We would like to have another life. And so religion is made up to accommodate that wish. Now, I think that actually that theory doesn't square with what religion actually holds. And here's why. Certainly it explains heaven. Heaven is a good example of wish fulfillment. But remember that all the major Abrahamic religions also have hell. Now think about that. Hell is a lot worse than diabetes. Hell's a lot worse than death. Why would we make that stuff up? The bottom line I'm trying to make is that diagnosis of religion as expressing wish fulfillment runs headlong into the actual facts that religious people actually sometimes fear a fate far worse than anything that life can offer them.
Rather than asking, would the world be better off without religion, is it more so a question of whether or not we think that religion is problematic or has been misappropriated, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
I'll make my own case hard by looking solely at Islam, because it is such a controversial subject in our world today. I would submit that the world would be vastly worse. The Muslim world would be vastly worse if it wasn't for Islam. Let's look at why that's the case. First of all, you have to look at what was there in the Bedouin culture before Muhammad. Rape, pillage, concubinage. Muhammad actually was a moderate in limiting the number of wives to 4. And by basically saying that you had to treat the 4 wives equally, giving them all the same gifts and so on, Muhammad essentially ensured that the entire Muslim world, for the most part, you'd have people with 1 wife.
There are people all over this world who, whether you think of them as simple-minded or not, the hope of their lives, the purpose of their lives, the good that they do is dependent, not in fact on evolutionary pressures alone, but on that candle, on the idea that God not threatens them, not is going to send them to hell, but that God created them in God's own image, that they are precious, that they are sacred, and so are other human beings. And they wouldn't live 3 minutes without that hope. And if you vote for the motion, then you're suggesting that the world would be better if the hope were taken away from them. It isn't, and you shouldn't.
That was a beautiful video on religion, in particular, God, the purpose of life, why, people are religious, and those that are not religious, what they have to say about them, and the fact that they did not really judge people that much while giving their opinion was a beautiful one. And they later spoke about Islam, relating it to Prophet Muhammad's time. And about Islam, the man said the world would have been better off if it's not for Islam. That is, Muslim world would have been God's story, if not for Islam. But I'm kind of confused. It's Islam that brought about Muslims, just like Christianity brought about Christians. So why will he say if it's not for Islam, Muslim world would have been worse? Definitely, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. What do you think, guys?